Okay, so we're going to go over this week's questions on adding and subtracting fractions, but first we'll start with adding. Okay, the first adding question was pretty straightforward because our denominators were the same. We had 2/5 plus 1/5. So because the denominators are the same, all we have to do is add the numerators. So 2 plus 1 is 3. So 2/5 plus 1 more fifth is equal to 3/5. For our second question, we had 1/5 plus 3/8. So because our denominators are different, we do have to find a common denominator. So I'll find the first 10 multiples of 5 and the first 10 multiples of 8 and see if we find any matching numbers. So if I line them all up here, we see that 40 is a common multiple of 5 and 8, so I'll use that as my common denominator. So I put 40 in, and how do I get from 5 to 40? Well, I have to times it by 8, so that means I have to times the numerator by 8. So 1 times 8 is 8, and to get from this denominator, 8 to 40, I had to times it by 5. So if I times the bottom by 5, I times the top by 5. 3 times 5 is 15. So 8/40 plus 15/40 is equal to 23/40. Our third question is 1/4 plus 7/12. So my first 10 multiples for 4 and 12 are listed below, and I find that 12 is a common multiple, so I'll use that as my common denominator. So to go from 4 to 12, I have to times it by 3. So times the top by 3. 1 times 3 is 3. And because this already has a 12 as its denominator, I just need to keep it the same. So I get 3/12 plus 7/12 equals 10/12. Now, with this fraction, I can reduce it or simplify it to 5/6 because I can divide both top and bottom by 2. So either 10/12 or 5/6 could be your answer. For question 4, we have 3/10 plus 2/5. So my multiples for 10 and 5 are below, and we quickly find that 10 is a multiple of both. So I get to keep 3/10 the same because its denominator is already 10. But 5, to turn 5 into 10, I have to times 5 by 2. So multiply the top by 2. 2 times 2 equals 4. So 3/10 plus 4/10 equals 7/10. For number 5, we have 5/6 plus 5/7. Now I have my multiples below. 6, first 10 multiples of 6, first 10 multiples of 7, and we have to go all the way down to here to see that we have 42 as a common multiple, so I'll use that as my common denominator. To get from 6 to 42, I have to times it by 7, so I multiply the top by 7. 5 times 7 is 35. And to get from 7 to 42, I have to multiply it by 6. So 5 times 6 is 30. So 35/42 plus 30/42 is 65/42. Now remember, when we have a numerator that's larger than the denominator, we call that an improper fraction, and we can convert that into a mixed number. Right? We learned that a couple weeks ago. So a mixed number is it's called a mixed number because it has a whole number and a fraction mixed together. So to get 65/42 into a mixed number, well, 42/42 would be one whole, so I can pull that out, and then I'll be left over with 23/42. So the answer is 1 and 23/42. Okay, now we are on to subtracting fractions. And just like our first addition fraction question, our first subtraction fraction question is a little bit easier because we have a common denominator already. So all we have to do is subtract the numerators. 5 minus 1 is 4. However, we can simplify 4/6. If we divide the top and bottom both by 2, just cut them in half, we get 2/3. So 4/6, or if we simplify it, 2/3. And here we have 4/8 minus 2/5. So I need to find a common denominator. So my first 10 multiples of 8, first 10 multiples of 5, I scan through them and I see that 40 is a common multiple, so I use that as my common denominator. So to get from 8 to 40, I have to times it by 5. So 4 times 5 is 20. To get from 5 to 40, I have to times it by 8. So do the same thing to the top. 2 times 8 is 16, and 20 40ths minus 16 40ths equal 4 40ths. But you might notice that we can divide the top and the bottom both by 4 to simplify the fraction so that it equals 1/10. Our next question is 2 sevenths minus 1/5. If we look through our multiples of the denominators, we'll find that 35 is a common multiple, so that becomes our common denominator. 7 times 5 equals 35, so 2 times 5 is 10. 5 times 7 is 35, so 1 times 7 is 7. And then we subtract them. 10 35ths minus 7 35ths equals 3 35ths. Here we have 7 eighths minus 2 sixths. The common multiple is 24. So to get from 8 to 24, I have to times it by 3. So 7 times 3 is 21. To get from 6 to 24, I times it by 4. So 2 times 4 is 8. And 21 24ths minus 8 24ths is 13 24ths. And our last question here, we have 4 fifths minus 1 seventh. So the common multiple of 5 and 7 is 35. So to get from 5 to 35, we multiply by 7. 4 times 7 is 28. To get from 7 to 35, we times it by 5. 1 times 5 is 5. 28 35ths minus 5 35ths is 23 35ths.